SFI. I am calling in from England and active duty Space Force spouse. And yeah, when I think politics, I think eye roll. That is my icebreaker answer to the question, even though I work in this field. All right, Alexis, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Alexis McDonald, Government Affairs Manager for Secure Families Initiative, and I am an active duty Navy spouse calling in from Virginia Beach, Virginia. Not as beautiful as Marseille, France, but maybe a little bit warmer than England, Sarah. And yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to you all about the do's and don'ts for military loved ones.
Alexis and I will be co-leading the slides today, and we have our intrepid Kate Marshallard on the call as well. Kate, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, sure. I am Kate Marshallard, and I'm in Virginia, and excited to see this briefing again. And then we will record it and share it so you can share it with folks afterwards.
All right, let's get into it. As everyone knows, at SFI, our mission is to mobilize diverse military partners and loved ones to be voters and advocates for their communities. We are strategically nonpartisan, and that's a helpful caveat for all of our discussions here today. We do not endorse candidates or parties, but rather focus on the issues at hand. The work we do, is really focused on plugging any gaps related to civic engagement, right? So we talk a lot about voting and voter registration, which can be uniquely challenging for military folks. We try to plug that gap. But we also talk about ways that you can get more involved even beyond voting. And today's training is one example of that. We're going to give the framework around the politics do's and don'ts so that folks can more confidently know what the parameters of the sandbox they get to play in are. So today, whether you've got a service member in your life, they may have received a refresher course or training on what they are not allowed to do during an election season. At least service members are supposed to get that training, whether their branch does it or not. Consider this your version. We are going to talk about the rules that apply to you as their partner, parent, kid, or other loved one. If you have any questions at any point, stick them in the chat. Alexis and I will take turns kind of monitoring and trying to get to them. And if we get through the presentation part quickly enough, we may even give the opportunity for folks to unmute and ask questions live. Okay, I'm going to get into it. And can I get a confirmation that folks can see the slides? Are we all good to go on that?
Yes.
Marvelous. Let me make sure I can see the slides. All right. So what do we mean when we use the term politics? Politics can colloquially be used to refer to a whole host of activities, right? There is voting, there is having conversations with people where you express what your opinion on things are. There is turning those opinions into advocacy, right? Pointing it at legislation and trying to make a change. There's taking even the next step, endorsing a candidate to become a lawmaker who might affect that legislation. And then, of course, there's a step of running for office yourself, becoming the lawmaker, becoming the change maker you want to see in the world. Politics might span this whole gamut when we talk, friend to friend. But for the purpose of the Department of Defense, there's a really important kind of distinction line that happens three-fifths of the way through this list. And this dividing line has to do with the difference between what I like to call capital P politics and lowercase p politics. And that division comes from another P word. It's called partisanship. Partisanship is defined as the promotion of a political party or candidate for office. And those partisan political activities, right, supporting a candidate, running for office yourself, those are the ones that the Department of Defense and DHS, ICU, Coast Guard, cares the most about regulating. And the reason makes a lot of sense, right? We want to avoid there being any perception that the military as an institution is doing anything like supporting or opposing a candidate. We need the institution to remain protected from that. And so this definition might help us sort through what activities are even considered political or not, and therefore which activities may or may not have rules around them. And of course, our goal would be to encourage everyone to participate in the total gamut. Next slide. So the first portion of this presentation is going to focus on like the official hard and fast rules having to do with political activities, because that's kind of that first step, right? And so to answer the question that this young little one is asking, aren't there rules against this sort of thing? The short answer is no. For you, at least, not really. See, if you're the partner, spouse, family member of someone in the military, but you yourself are not in the military or otherwise a federal employee, none of the rules that have to do with political activity actually apply to you, whether I'm talking about the Hatch Act or DoD Directive 1344.10, which I've read so you don't have to. Those are rules that exist that do not actually govern your activities. They govern your uniformed loved ones. And what we want to focus on are the ways in which your life may or may not overlap with your service members. And we'll talk about that in a second. But I think it's a really important kind of first paradigm set to say, the DoD doesn't have jurisdiction over you. You have signed no dotted lines giving away any of your rights. And I think that's an important mental shift, especially in this military family life, where sometimes those lines feel a little bit blurred. Now, before you think, wow, that was a really strangely short webinar, we're all done. Like I said, there are ways in which our lives can overlap with our service members, and those are the details that I'm going to dig into right now. So what restrictions might affect you, right? Not govern you, but affect your actions. Let's start up for folks who might live on a military installation. Let's kind of start with that category. If you own a vehicle, right, that's going to be parked in that base, you are limited to the kind of political signage that you're allowed to have on that vehicle. The directives are very specific. You can have a bumper sticker, but nothing too big or too small. So bumper sticker, okay. Anything bigger than that, keep it off. If you want to conduct partisan political activities, right? So that's supporting a candidate, that might be phone banking, that might be canvassing, that might be fundraising for someone. All of that is fine and dandy. Just make sure you do it off base. So if you live on base, unfortunately, it means you can't do it in your own house because your house is base property. But there are plenty of hopefully coffee shops and other venues like libraries off your base that you can go to and use instead. If you live on base, it also means you can't have what we'll call partisan political signage, AKA a candidate yard sign, because that is against the rules for on-base properties, and that is what your house is if you live on base. Now, I will point out there are two asterisks on this rule, because I do want to clarify there is a difference between signage and flags. I don't know if anyone remembers a hubbub around flags about 5 years ago. But essentially, flags are treated very specifically from the DoD now, and it's no longer a here are the ones that are disallowed kind of list, but rather it's a list of here are the ones that are allowed. All other flags are not allowed. So the assumption is most flags are not allowed. And I think the list of ones that are allowed are like branches of the military and like other kind of official flags. Why am I going to this detail? Just make sure, even if it's not technically a sign, if it's a flag, those are treated differently in the regulations, and you still can't have it for a political candidate if you live off base or on base, excuse me. Now, if you're like me, you do not live on a military installation, you might be wondering how many of these restrictions might impact me. Well, if you've got your own personal vehicle, right, if you're only going to be driving off base, the rules about bumper sticker don't apply to you in your car. If you think at times you'll be driving on base, though, either you or your partner with whom you may share the car, good to keep it safe to just a bumper sticker. The good news is, though, the other stuff don't apply to you, right? If you want to host a phone bank in your home, if you want to have a yard sign for the candidate you're supporting, if you live off base, the rules do not reach far enough to contact you. So that's the good news. Now, remember, these are not rules that are applying to you because they're applying to you. They're applying to your service member. And when y'all might live in the same home or share property like a vehicle, the rule is there that your service member can't do the thing. And the concern is always, if you do the thing and there's a perception that it's actually your service member doing the thing, that's where the kind of tension comes from. So hopefully that's, again, we're sticking to that central paradigm that we established at the get-go. That comes in handy for this next rule, right? I know that some folks share social media accounts or share emails with their significant other. They have like a joint Facebook, for example. If that's the case, again, you can't use that account to do things that your service member can't do, because there's always the chance that someone could perceive it as coming from your service member, not you. And what's one thing that your service member can't do? They can't solicit donations for candidates. Now you can solicit donations from candidates, just don't use that joint account. And fun fact, your service member can actually donate to a candidate if they feel so compelled. They just can't ask other people to donate as well. And there's one more rule on this slide, and it is kind of straying away from the partisan political definition and talking a little bit more broadly about political adjacent demonstrations. If at any point there's a march, a rally, a protest that you want to join, if you are stateside, you should feel compelled to do so. It's when you are overseas that there are sometimes different rules, and it's all country specific. So let's give an example. In 2020, there were Black Lives Matter protests that spun up all across the world, right? Primarily in the United States and inspired from the United States, of course. But there were lots of communities across the world who saw solidarity in that movement and had their own demonstrations in their own home countries. The good news is there's some countries where if you're stationed there, you can go show up to something like that. We had someone who was stationed in Canada who found out that their SOFA permitted it. But a lot of countries, it's disallowed per the negotiation the US has had with that country. Germany is a prime example. If you're in Germany, even if you're not the service member themselves, even if you're the civilian family member, you cannot join a march, protest, demonstration, any sort of thing. So if you're interested in that kind of a thing, check your country-specific SOFA. Now, I've given some detailed bullets here, but it's all because it's all pointing in the same direction. Every specific rule we might talk about, it is all in pursuance of one general rule of thumb, and that is this. At any point, we should avoid doing anything that might give the impression that a party or a candidate is endorsed or opposed by the United States Armed Forces. Again, the kind of core foundational principle to all of these things is protecting an institution that needs to be protected from politicization, which is, of course, a concern I think all of us understand and can relate to. And so if you ever find yourself wondering, okay, I know this wasn't on Sarah's PowerPoint slide, but can I do this or should I do that? This is a good gut check to vet any actions from. And anytime you're in a position where it does feel kind of dicey, always feel free to give yourself a caveat. So let's say you're posting on your personal social media, you might be endorsing a candidate, and your profile picture has a lot of military paraphernalia in the background. You might be thinking to yourself, am I allowed to do that or not? And the short answer is you're probably allowed to do that. Like, that's not on these rules, that's prohibited. But it doesn't hurt to remind folks like, hey, just as a reminder, this is my personal opinion, not that of the United States Space Force, for example, if that happens to your branch. Hopefully this has inspired you to think of all the things, not just that you can't do, but that you can do. We have this huge slide that has a huge list of ideas, suggestions, options. And the purpose of this slide is not to be comprehensive. There are even more things beyond this slide that you can absolutely do. Rather, the goal of this slide is to overwhelm you with possibility. We assume so often that we are told, no, you can't do things. And sometimes it's more fun to focus on, yeah, but what can I do? And when it comes to political activity, even partisan political activity, there's a lot more in that column than not. I'm going to share a couple examples for myself, and then I'm going to hand it over to my teammate, Alexis, who's going to carry us through the rest of this training. But again, just to give a few tangible examples of what's possible. When my family was stationed at Offutt Air Force Base, Nebraska, I felt pretty disconnected from the political scene, having interned at the White House prior to that, right? But I really wanted to go back to feeling like my old self and feeling connected to something that I cared about. And so I actually got a job. I was hired to be the manager for a state Senate person running for office. And it was such a rewarding and educational and drinking from a fire hydrant experience, right? It involved knocking on doors and trying to persuade voters to vote for my candidate. It involved making judgment calls about mailers and doing phone banking and volunteer management, all this fun stuff. It's about the most partisan that you can get, right? Because I was literally saying, vote for my person, because I think he'll do right in this world. And that was okay. So that's the summary. It was not only a great opportunity, but at no point was there anyone saying, you know, this was against Hatch Act, because it wasn't, because it was me doing it, not my service member. And so if I can navigate that thorny stuff, I promise you can as well. Alexis, you have some examples from your own life, do you not?
Way to put me on the spot there, Sarah. So yes, Sarah is right. I have utilized some of my time, my face, my toddler's face, and some ads for candidates that I have supported before, for mailers for candidates that I've supported before. As a military spouse, I have also ran a campaign for a candidate as well. And so just to reiterate what Sarah had said, there are countless opportunities should you want to engage in partisan activities. And I know that there might be a concern that everyone's thinking of. Will this affect your service member's career? This is a number one concern that we hear, that folks are nervous or have some anxiety surrounding what will your activities, even though you're allowed to, what effect that will have on your service member's career. And what I would first like to say is that you and your family, especially your service member, have better insight on the dynamics of your spouse's command, the dynamics when it comes to promotions, just for lack of better word, workplace politics, right? So your spouse has the most insight. And so what I will say is talk with your spouse, talk with your family, and what is in your comfort level is what you should go by. Because us at SFI, we can give you all of the tools, we can give you all of the rules, the resources, but what we can't do is make that decision for you, what's best for your family. And so what I will do is share one example, because we do know that folks at times can't speak up for themselves. One most prevalent example is when Senator Tuberville was holding up military promotions based on a DoD policy that he did not agree with. And because there were Senate hearings that would affect those being on that list for promotion, those spouses couldn't speak out. Those service members, of course, couldn't speak out. And so SFI was able to use our platform to speak on behalf of those spouses. And so I just want to share that as one example of where sometimes you can't speak on certain things, or sometimes you can't engage in certain activities because of how it would affect your service member's career. But that is what makes SFI so amazing, is that those who are unable to tell their stories, we are able to pick up that baton and share those stories for them. And I just want to say that one of the most powerful ways and one of the most patriotic things that we can do as spouses is share our stories. Storytelling is political advocacy. Because we are the ones who are living these experiences as active duty spouses. We are the ones who are seeing the effects of policies that are passed at the federal, state, or even local level can affect our military families. And so don't think that sharing your story or sharing your experience, whether you are explicit about who you are and how that is affecting you, or whether you're sharing your story anonymously, but it is one of the best things and most patriotic things that we can do. And so at SFI, we primarily focus on civic engagement, like voting, and again, sharing your personal story, which is more than aligned with the military ethos. And so if you are having concerns or doubts about whether sharing your story is unpatriotic, let us reassure you that it's not. Sharing your story is, again, one of the most powerful things that you can do. And political advocacy at its core is storytelling, because one example, we could have so many different policies, but if we don't have stories about why those policies need to be passed, or why those policies are important, or how those policies will affect people on a day-to-day level, it's harder to get those policies passed. So, for example, the PCS safety campaign here at SFI, we have military families of color sharing their lived experiences that were able to help us get policy passed at DoD, and so at the Senate level for DoD. And there's more about that on our website. And so I just want to say that storytelling, again, I keep saying this because it's so, so important. Storytelling is so important. And as spouses, we have the freedom to share the stories and experiences that our service members can't. We can speak up for them in ways that they can't speak for themselves. And I just want to remind folks of that. And we also have the ability to bridge the military civilian divide so that our voices are still represented. Okay, so being military, right? Of course, when we move somewhere, when we PCS, when we're stationed somewhere, and most of us, I know, are stationed away from family, right? Unless you're in that rare box where you're just a few hours drive from family, or you're stationed in your hometown, or whatever the case may be. Ellie said, get new friends. We have plenty here at SFI. And so what if your activism makes it harder to make or keep friends? The first thing I'll say is anywhere you go, be authentic. Be yourself, be open. And I think at our core, right, we have to be able to respect different opinions. We have to be able to respect the fact that we have the freedom to speak out, that we have the freedom to be engaged in our political systems. And so again, be authentic and don't be afraid of keeping or making friends based on what you like to do. And as folks get to know you, they'll see you for who you are, and they won't have this demonized idea or version of a political trope in their head, because they're seeing that you are this authentic person, that these are your beliefs, these are your values, and you're going to stand up for those. And so I just wanted to share a story with you all. I have a very close friend. We've been friends for about 6 years. I met her at a FRG coffee. And a few weeks after that coffee, we went out for a wine night. And I had asked her, I said, do you want to come to a demonstration, a specific demonstration march with me? And she said, no, I don't think that's my scene. And then she went into, what she believed and what her just scratching the surface about what her politics were. And we had a very respectful discussion about what we both believed in, what we both supported or did not support. And we found that we were essentially, on different sides of the spectrum on certain issues, right? But what was there was that we had a respect for one another. We had a respect for each other's thoughts, each other's values, each other's beliefs at our core. And 6 years later, we have very spirited debates, and we couldn't be any closer as friends, right? And so I just want to say, you may find folks who are on the same spectrum, same side of the spectrum as you are, or you may find folks who surprise you. And even though you have differing thoughts or differing ideas or opinions when it comes to politics and political advocacy, be authentic. Don't be afraid to share, and don't be afraid to show who you are, because you may find folks who are supportive of what you're doing, or are going to be right there in the middle of the activism with you, or folks might also surprise you and say, well, I respect what you're doing and I can see why you're doing it, but I believe in this. And so again, just be authentic, right? And you won't even have to worry about whether it's harder or not to make or keep friends. So I kind of already gave my example. Sorry, I'm sorry, Kate. But I will just add, most importantly, in being authentic, do not compromise your own values and your own beliefs to be friends with someone. And I can speak firsthand about how hard, isolation is as a military spouse. I know we've all probably experienced it, or that like gap between getting to a new duty station and finding your friends and finding your village. But truly be authentic and don't compromise for anyone, because when you find yourself compromising your own values or beliefs, you're no longer going to find yourself around other authentic folks or folks who will accept you for you and who will see you for you. So let's go to the examples of other military spouses who we know and that have advocated and have, kind of torn down that huge curtain. Can we go to the next slide, Kate? We'll come back to this one when Sarah rejoins us. So you may see some spouses here that you recognize. I know I definitely see Brandy Jones, our organizing director, in some of these photos. I also spot Daniela Horn and Erin Anhall in some of these photos as well, who are advocates at Secure Families Initiative and are also members of our PCS safety campaign and help to amplify the lived experiences of military families. And I'm going to hand it back over to Sarah to talk about some of the first military spouses who, kind of pulled that curtain down and started to advocate and really say that military spouses have a voice and need to have a voice.
Sure thing. So again, if we go back to earlier in the presentation where we talk about politics can mean lots of things from voting to running for office, all of these examples are meant to show how each level is well manned or womaned by lots of military partners and loved ones getting involved. So the specific photo slide that we've gotten here is an example of women you may think have a really low likelihood of wading into anything politics or adjacent. These were Gold Star spouses. These are folks whose families paid the ultimate price. And they noticed over time that there was a loophole in our country's obligation to show up for those families and to support them. And it took decades. That's another reason we've got this example. They were in it for the long haul. They spent decades rehashing the story of some of their most traumatic, moments in their life. They organized amongst each other. They found support from nonprofits were able to have their back. And finally, they were able to close what's usually referred to as the widow's tax loophole. And they were able to kind of plug that quality of life gap. And I like this example because, it is in some ways, these are examples of folks whose shoulders in some ways we stand on, right? They set the precedent that, no, it's okay for military partners and loved ones to wade into, in their case, advocacy, right? They weren't doing anything partisan. They were just saying, hey, there's a problem, we want to solve it. And of course, the other photo with all of the other great examples of folks include folks doing nonpartisan as well as partisan political activities. And again, the whole upshot is that anything that you're considering that you really have it on your heart this election season in particular, like I really want to phone bank for a candidate that I care about, or I want to take the next step, I want to host a fundraiser in my home. If there's something that you're thinking of doing, promise you're not the first to do it. You may not know anyone personally who's done that exact thing, but there's a whole network of us, a whole community of us who are getting civically engaged and even politically engaged. And it is a pretty darn cool community. I love what Ellie said in the chat about building a community around it here at SFI. I'll admit 5 years ago when Kate and I co-founded SFI, it did feel a little lonelier than it does today. And that's a good sign. That means we're headed in the right direction, right? We feel less like weirdos now because we've found a lot of folks to join. So that's the purpose there. I'm going to go ahead and pause and open up the floor. So between my section and Alexis's section, we've covered a lot of ground. We've talked about the hard and fast rules, and then we've also started sharing our own personal thoughts on this like squishier social norms part, right? There's no rule against something doesn't mean we still don't feel sometimes like, oh, but am I really supposed to? So I just want to pause and open it up. If anyone has questions, like if there's anything we can clarify, if anyone has maybe a hypothetical situation you want us to talk through. Again, I am going to ask that everyone abide by our nonpartisan guidelines. Again, we have to stay below that red dotted line we had on that slide for our purpose as a nonprofit. So you can anonymize things as you need. But yeah, if anyone's got anything or even comments, if there's something that you want to share, I would love to open the floor to that. And I know too many people on this call to think that y'all are shy. So don't even try that. No, I would also, can I say one other thing, one other invitation to share? If anyone feels proud of themselves, like if there's something that you've gotten to do this year that's in this kind of political world, again, keep it nonpartisan if you don't mind. If there's anything you want to like, that's on your heart to brag about, I would love to hear some brags. Let's brag on ourselves. If there's a comfort zone you've gone, I'll even share, I've gotten to speak at a couple of virtual events for a campaign that I care a lot about. And I'm proud of myself because that felt scary sometimes. And I've not always done that, but.
I can relate to that because, can I speak? Is that all right? Am I not muted? Okay. Yeah, I recently did something. I won't say on behalf of who, but it was a huge virtual event with a lot of very well-known people and podcasters, and obviously people that are used to being in front of the camera. And I actually spoke on behalf of the Veteran Military Family Caucus that I'm a part of. And I'm not a service member, by the way. I'm an ally of y'all. And so I was the only person that was available to just quickly speak on this event. And I was so nervous. And then, of course, after waiting like 2 hours in the waiting room, on the Zoom room, which was really fun, actually, all of a sudden it was my turn to go. And where was I? I was in the bathroom. I had to go. And then they were going, "Where's Susan? Where's Susan?" And "Oh, I'm right here." Oof. And then, of course, I had to totally bluff it, and it was just okay. And then everybody gave me lots of compliments afterwards. But I really wish I could learn to do things like that, but, it takes practice. Anyway, so that was stepping out of my comfort zone. Yeah, that's my story. Huh?
Thank you for sharing. I love hearing that. Thank you, Susan.
Sarah, I just wanted to go back a little bit to the need to be authentic, not just with your friend circle, but also with external partners that you might be working with. So I know I was approached for an ad, and at first I said yes. And once the ball started getting rolling and I was interacting with different folks, I ultimately pulled out. I said, this didn't feel right. I talked with other folks that I trusted, and I said, there's just something that didn't feel right about this. It felt more that I was being used as a prop as a military spouse more than being invited for my authentic story and for my lived experiences. And so I just want to say that if you say yes to something, you can say no at any time. I mean, unless you sign a contract. I don't know about all the legal things. I won't say anything about legally binding contracts. But if you are just volunteering your time, your effort, your face, your story, sharing your story, don't be afraid to pull out if it doesn't align with your values, if you do not feel as though the space is somewhere that you can be authentic or that you are not valued in that space.
That is an excellent contribution, Alexis. I love that. I love hearing that. We're a hot commodity, us military families. The purpose of this training is to make sure you can act with agency, but of course, exactly what Alexis said, follow that gut, for sure.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't say, as military spouses, military connected voters, it is so important for us to be civically engaged, and if not engaged, then civically aware, especially for the folks who are making the decisions over war and peace for our service members. And so even if you're not ready to jump into, the civic engaged waters, then just know what's happening, know what the folks who are making these decisions are saying, and know how their decisions will impact you. So I'll just add, Daniela said in the chat, just be careful on all information being shared for military spouses, especially from military influencers and creators sharing opinions instead of facts.
Daniela, do you have any interest in coming off mute and elaborating? I'm not trying to put you on the spot. If you want to keep it to chat, that is a-okay, but I would love to hear more if you've got more.
I second that.
No worries. I know it's on the early side Pacific coast. But if I can maybe foot stomp what Daniela is saying, that is and Daniela herself, who has an amazing following and is an influencer. I think you speak from a place of authority, Daniela. We've heard from folks engaging on social media platforms this fall. There's a lot of misinformation out there, whether it's the person with the platform sharing misinformation from their platform, or whether it's folks engaging in the comments or stitches or whatever. We've actually started to see some trends, right? If military families are hot commodities, like we said, for things like endorsements, they're also can sometimes see a lot of activity directed at our community, especially non-white communities, especially non-English speaking communities, where the moderation against misinformation is way underfunded amongst social media platforms, especially. And so it is so important to, just as we are careful with our own personal voices and how we wield them responsibly, not everyone is going to be that responsible. And I think having that critical thinking lens of analysis every time we're consuming information, Daniela, is such an important role.
Hi. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Yeah, so I thought about that because I've been seeing it it just keeps popping up on like my feed, and especially after the debate, of course, that brought up a lot of emotions, especially when it comes to the talks of deployments and stuff like that. So I have seen that a lot, to where a lot of influencers and creators who are also military spouses share a lot of misinformation and opinions instead of facts. And I think that's important because we're always kind of like holding on to our emotions as military spouses. And I think that plays into it a lot. So I think if we have the platform, share wisely, and of course, facts instead of opinions.
So certainly welcome. If this kind of whet your appetite and made you interested in more civic community events like this, consider joining SFI and plugging in or during and after election season. Oh, Brandy's not able to unmute. Shucks. Oh well, Brandy. Well, hopefully we did okay. But thank you for being here. All right, Alexis and Caitlin, I'm looking at you. Any final thoughts?
No, there's all the different links for all of the different ways you can take action with SFI in the chat, as well as our general link for our website, where you will find everything housed there, our issues, how to take action, and learn a little bit more about SFI. And so I will just echo Sarah's call to action to join us, and looking forward to meeting new faces, whether it's someone here today or it's someone that you share these links with in your network, or even in your family, or in your little military village where you're stationed. But thank you all for joining us.